Hello everyone, welcome back to the Looney Bin. My name is Looney, and today's video I want to go into a comparison that many people in the One Piece community and also in the anime manga community have made in regards to Luffy. And it really is a very kind of like, how do I put this? It kind of showcases disrespect to Luffy as a individual in a certain way. And a lot of people think that because they act very similar and and essentially Luffy is kind of inspired by this character, they're essentially the same people, right? They're essentially the same type of person. They're goofy, they are this character that is always cheerful, so happy, and kind of naive of the world. And that's essentially what that comparison is that I kind of disagree with, and I'm gonna try to go into as much as I can as to why I don't agree with this comparison, or at least this part of that comparison. And the comparison I'm talking about is Luffy and Goku, right? I understand that Luffy and Goku are very similar in the types of characters, right? They're very, very much alike. And this isn't for like their goofiness, their cheerfulness, their that fire of burning inside them to fight, and that kind of stuff, or because there's a lot of similarities with Goku and Luffy. There's no question about it, because after all, Luffy was inspired by Goku, right? But the comparison I'm referring to that I kind of find a little bit disrespectful for Luffy is the idea that he is very clueless, he is very naive, he doesn't understand anything about romance, sex, female reproductive systems, right? That he has no clue whatsoever. And I'm gonna go into some points in the manga itself that kind of showcases that Luffy does know a lot of this stuff that Goku initially never did. So for those who don't know Goku and the whole thing about him being naive to essentially, the opposite gender, when Goku meets Bulma in the Dragon Ball manga, I'm not talking about Dragon Ball Z, but I'm talking about the initial Dragon Ball manga, he has no idea about the female anatomy. He has no idea about, the difference between, men and female, which is why he gets so confused in a very kind of awkward scene in the manga where he lifts up her, I think her like pajamas or something. I don't remember, but it was just awkward in general. And he doesn't find, and he sees something different down there instead of, what he has. I'm trying to not go into too much detail, but you get the point, right? And he is confused. He has no, like, why does Bulma not have the same thing, Goku does? And that showcases a lot of his, cluelessness and how naive he was, right? Because, again, the reason why he is like this and why he acted like this is because Goku lived in the mountains by himself with his grandfather for like pretty much a really long time, and he had no interaction with other people, with other people of the opposite gender. He had no interactions whatsoever, so he wouldn't have the knowledge. I'm sure his grandfather probably didn't even teach him any of this stuff, right? And because of this, because he has no social interactions, he has, he never really got involved in society until, after his grandfather's death. Essentially, it was just, Goku had no clue about this sort of stuff. And it happens. Like, for example, look at Tarzan, right? Tarzan, at least, was involved with primates that very much resemble closely to humans, so he probably had some sort of knowledge about, like, human interactions in a sort of way. With Goku, he didn't have that. He didn't have that type of interactions, and you can even see with Tarzan that he's confused about, what he's feeling, and that's the same thing with Goku, except Goku is one of those characters that just has, like, no idea of almost anything society-wise, because, again, he never experienced any of that. And from that, he, understandably, because he doesn't know marriage or anything like that, he accepts marrying Chi-Chi, or, the promise to marry Chi-Chi, because he thought that, getting married meant food, right? And eventually, as when they got older, she approached him again about it, and they got married. They created, not created, but gave birth to a bunch of children, and they're still happily married as far as I know. I don't know, but yes, that's Goku's essentially naive nature, because he just didn't absolutely had no experience with society, how society works, and having any interactions with not only other men, other people, but females of and people of the opposite gender, right? So what does that mean in terms of Luffy? Well, here's the thing. A lot of people see Goku, and immediately plant that on Luffy. Immediately plant that idea on Luffy about how Luffy is exactly the same way Goku was, right? Where he's naive, where he doesn't know about romance, where he doesn't know about sex, weddings, marriage, and all that stuff, right? When in reality, Luffy already, was way farther into the steps that Goku had, because Luffy himself was part of society. He understood the norms of society. He understood, he probably saw people kiss. He probably was involved in some sort of marriages. It would be kind of weird if he never was at some point before he met Shanks, that there was some sort of marriage, or maybe Makino probably told him something, right? But he has experience with the opposite gender. He has experience with social norms, so he would know about marriage, right? It's the reason why, he reacts about, Nami getting married to Absalom. It's why he reacts to Sanji getting married and understands what marriage actually is, right? He knows what it is. Like I said, I'm sure he's seen people kiss, so I'm pretty sure he knows what kissing is. Sex is still debatable, because it's unsure of if Luffy actually knows anything about it, but I think with the way Luffy has grown up with not only other people and social norms, he probably at some point in his life learned about it, or just knew, found out about it from discussions, and I think he does have an understanding of sex. Maybe he could see it as mating or whatever, right? But I do think he has some sort of knowledge of it, because again, social norms, society, he has been involved with that for a long time. He's not as clueless as Goku was, because Goku just didn't have any experience with that, but Luffy has. You see it in WCI mostly whenever they talk about Sanji's wedding, where he knows about kissing, because when they ask him when do you step out to interrupt the wedding, he literally responds by saying, oh, when Sanji goes into for the kiss, right? He mentions it in the manga, so he knows it. He knows what kissing is. He knows what marriage is. Because if he didn't know what marriage is, he would have accepted Hancock's proposal for marriage instantly. But he doesn't. Which is why when people say that, oh no, Luffy just doesn't know what marriage is, all Hancock has to do is just tell Luffy that, marriage is meat or something, and, she immediately is able to captivate him into marrying her. But that's not the case. Luffy knows what marriage is. WCI showcases that he knows what marriage is. He knows what kissing is. It's like you're trying to make Luffy look like this clueless individual who knows nothing, who literally was like Goku, who just never had any sort of interaction with society, and that's one of the things that really bothers me about Luffy's character, or people's interpretation of Luffy's character, is that people think that's the case. Because he has this childlike wonder. He doesn't know about some of the more mature realities of the world. He knows. He just doesn't give too much of a care for it, right? The only reason why he cared about Sanji's wedding is because it was Sanji, right? It was something that was happening with his crew members, so he was, he made, he talked about it, he referenced it, he talked about Sanji's wedding, he talked about when Sanji goes for the kiss and stuff like that, because he knows, and he only really goes into talking about it or caring about it when it involves something that it is him, whether it's one of his friends, or when Hancock asks to marry him. He knows. He's not like Goku. He's not going to be fooled by the idea that marriage equals food. He's not going to do that. And that's what a lot of people seem to think. Even if you are joking about that, which I understand that some people are. I fully understand that. But the reality is, you cannot expect Luffy to be like Goku in that aspect. Because Luffy can know about marriage because of the fact that he interacted in society itself. Right? And I think also with some of the stuff that Oda has mentioned in his SBS, that Luffy is a healthy young boy, meaning that he knows. Even when they talk about like how he didn't have an interaction when he saw Hancock naked, Oda literally said, no, Luffy knows Luffy knows the appeal of someone naked. He's interested, but he's not entranced. He's not going to act like Sanji. He's not going to act like Brook or someone else, blushing, nosebleed, or doing whatever Sanji does whenever he gets excited, right? He's not going to do that. He's interested, but he's not going to act out in that sort of way. Because at the end of the day, he doesn't really care that much. He's not going to care enough where, like, he's going to be like them. So that's why I feel like that's part of Luffy's character that gets really sort of it just gets, it doesn't get me mad, it just gets me like confused and worried that people think that because Luffy kind of acts childish, and that is in part due to Toei kind of making him very childish in a lot of the filler stuff that they do, or like even not even in filler stuff, but like just some of the writing they do for him in like filler scenes. It just, part of the reason why people think this way is because of that. And Toei has a part to blame when Oda doesn't necessarily showcase it that much, to the point where it just becomes like, what is Toei doing? They shrink him to make him look smaller than everybody else, to make him appealing to children. That's something that they do, but it's also kind of like, it's silly to do so. It's so weird. But again, Luffy understands marriage. He understands kissing. He understands sex. He understands all of this stuff. He just does not care enough, right, to be essentially interested in those things currently. Now, later down the line, he might be interested in. He might be interested in falling in love with somebody. I don't think he will get married at all, essentially, because the way I see Luffy in marriage is that Luffy believes that marriage is essentially giving up his freedom, right? It's kind of like a weird thing where he believes that to be the case, and that he's no longer free if he's married to somebody, right? Even if he loves that person, right? Getting married might, be seen to him as, locking himself and giving up his freedom. It probably, I don't know where he would have got that idea, but I think that's like part of the reason why he doesn't want to get married in general. But I do think he can fall in love. I do think he will. And again, I understand that a lot of people think he's ace, he's aro ace, he's aromantic, and some believe he's demisexual as well. And that is another topic to discuss in general, right? Which I may later on in a video, or maybe not, because it is it's not controversial discussion. It's just you have to be very cautious in terms of that, right? But I do think that eventually, when Luffy's done with his adventure, after he becomes Pirate King and he's able to be free and do whatever he wants, he could fall in love. I mean, after all, Roger did, Garp did, and Garp and Roger essentially are very similar to Luffy in a lot of aspects. They may be different characters in the sense of, like, who they are, right? But they do show similarities that, are much more closer to Luffy than someone like Goku. So that's what I want to talk about. Again, I feel like that's part of Luffy's character that gets so much misinformed about it, and I just really wanted to express my opinion on it. If you don't agree with me, I mean, I'm more than willing to discuss it in the comments, respectfully. I don't, I'm not going to respond to anyone who comments like, no, you're goddamn wrong or whatever, right? again, it's a discussion. It's not. It's just something to discuss with people, and it's not something to get really angry over, right? At the end of the day, it's just a simple discussion. And I would love to have that with anyone who is willing to, at least, give me the opportunity to have that discussion. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, bye bye. Thank you so much.